And I had this experience with the wilderness that I had never had before. It was powerful and very moving. I knew that the idea that I had had about starting a program for veterans and trying to connect them to the wilderness had to stop being an idea, and I had to step forward and I had to make it happen.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, where we talk to athletes, adventurers, and business owners from around the world of adventure sports. Whether you're climbing Mount Everest, starting a bike shop, or getting up off your couch to take your kids hiking for the first time, we want you to have the motivation and inspiration you need to chase that next adventure. The Adventure Sports Podcast is brought to you by Camp Crate, the leaders in fully planned self-guided backpacking adventures, as well as backpacking gear rental. You can check them out at campcrate.net. Before I knew better, I used to carry cans of food into the backcountry like a doofus. Obviously, I don't do that anymore. I use freeze-dried food, and I really only use Peak Refuel, the best backpacking food, the best freeze-dried food in the world. And if you keep listening to the episode, I can show you how to save 20% off an order if you want some. Powder 7's team of ski experts makes buying skis pretty easy. They're actually known for helping customers find the right gear specifically for them. They even sell used skis, which is pretty cool. Plus, Powder 7 ships to just about anywhere in the world, and they have incredibly fast shipping in the U.S. Visit them online at powder7.com, or you can stop by their store in Golden, Colorado. If you're like me, you have some pain and inflammation from your adventure sport. Sometimes you don't sleep well, and you can even deal with stress and anxiety. We have a possible solution for you later on in the show, so keep listening if you deal with any of those issues. So today's guest is Todd Crevier, and he is a veteran, spent many years in the military, has some issues that arose from it, addiction to pain meds, some trauma he was dealing with, pain, chronic pain. And when he got back home, he realized he needed community. That's one of the biggest things I hear from my friends that are vets and from vets I know, is finding people in your normal everyday life that can understand what you went through. And Todd decided to do something about it. He took a trip to Yellowstone that absolutely changed his life. And I'm going to ask him a question up front, and he's just going to tell his story. And that's going to be a lot of the episode, is just him telling his story of how the idea for his new organization came about, New England Adventures, as well as the goal behind it. Just his story. It's amazing. You know, something we hear a lot is people who have an experience in the outdoors and it changes something about them. I know for me, everything I'm doing, everything I want out of life has come from sitting on a rock, looking at a tree, watching animals do their thing, looking at a mountain as the sun went down. Like, it's stuff that's that simple. That's life-changing. That's why we listen to this podcast. We are all connected by that mutual love for adventure, but not just adventure in the outdoors, doing amazing things outside. If you haven't had an experience like that, I want you to do something about it. I want you to take that trip. I want you to take time off work, take your family, figure it out, save your pennies, sell some crap, whatever you got to do. Get out there, go do something close by your house, far away, whatever. Go to a national park, go to a place that's wild, go to the woods in your backyard, and just sit, experience it. Get away from your desk, get away from it. Get away from your car, get away from your phone, throw that thing in a lake if you have to. And go sit. I don't care if you live in New York City. We just had a guest on from New York City that gets out more than half of us do. Probably more than I do. Get out there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometime soon. Just experience the world that is not rearranged by human hands, the natural world, the world that doesn't need you to exist. It's powerful, man. It's life-changing. We've heard it so many times on the show before. Getting out there changes your life. And everyone's story that you've heard and you're like, no, I could never do something like that. Well, guess what? You know what it started it for them? Something small. You know what it started it for me? Something small. An oak tree in my backyard that I used to go and climb around on and look at and wonder, how the heck did it grow from this little acorn? That's what started it. Doesn't have to be much. It just has to be wild. Anyway, rant over. Enjoy the show. You can always support us through patreon.com. Man, we've had a lot of new patrons this week. We've had 3 new patrons just this week. So thank you guys. I don't know when the last time I announced names were, but here, let me read them off real quick. So we got Caleb, Randall, Derek, Jessica, Dee, Kevin, George, Helena. I don't know if I said 1 or 2 of those names before in the past because this was from the last few weeks, but thank y'all so much for supporting the show. This really, really means a lot to us. And, you know, if you'd like to support the show, if this show means something to you, patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. $5 a month, as little as $1 a month, but it's up to you. You don't have to afford anything. This show is free to you because we want you to be inspired to go outside and to experience this world. It is beautiful, it is awesome, it's life-changing, and it can be your refuge. It can be your therapy to get out there and bike or paddleboard or just walk around, whatever it is, bird watch, I don't care. Get out there and take somebody with you every once in a while at least. All right, I'm done. Okay, enjoy the episode. Todd is amazing. I love what he's doing. And if you know somebody that needs his services, needs his organization, you know a vet that's in need, reach out to him because it is incredibly important that we all have a community and a place that we can connect with people that we understand and who understand us. All right, here's the episode. And so you retired from the Army and basically have a passion for the outdoors and wanted to start something that helps veterans connect with the outdoors. Well, why don't you tell us what was the story behind New England Adventures? What led you to this, and what was your experience in the Army like?
Sure. So just as a brief military background, September 11th was a pretty important day in my life, like it was for a lot of people who end up joining the service after the events of September 11th. I was kind of in a bad spot in life, in a bad marriage, in a bit of a failed career attempt. You know, September 11th happened. It really changed the course and trajectory of my life in a pretty massive way. I was 25 at the time, and about a month after September 11th happened, I went down to the local recruiting station. I was living down in Maryland at the time. You know, I felt it was my duty as an American to join and to serve. I thought about joining the service after getting out of college and just wasn't the right time. And about a month after signing up, I found myself on an airplane headed down to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, going through basic training and all of that. As the oldest guy in the platoon, I was 25 and I was there with a bunch of 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. And so I was the old guy there. Interesting because most of them had signed up prior to September 11th happening, and they were all a bit petrified, a bit scared at the idea that September 11th had happened, and now the prospect of going overseas and fighting was a very present reality. And, you know, I was one of the few that had signed up after September 11th, knowing that would end up leading me to go overseas and fight for my country. So went through basic training and my AIT and went back home and got back to normal life. And then in the evening, after I got home from work one night in, I believe it was very early December of 2003, got a phone call from a buddy of mine in my unit. And he told me, you know, I needed to pack my bags. We'd just gotten notification that we going to be getting transferred to a unit in Connecticut that was getting ready to go to Iraq. A bit petrifying, but exciting as well. You know, as a soldier, you want to be tested. You want to see that your training, your skills that you learned to do your job in the service are going to stand up. You know, when the bullets start flying and people's lives are on the line, you want to know that you're going to be able to do your job and do it well. And the thing that I was scared about was my wife, who's now my ex-wife, but my wife at the time, and I had found out that about 2 weeks earlier that she was pregnant with our second son. And so the prospect of going overseas and leaving her home with a 4-year-old and her pregnant was pretty scary. But Went over there, did my job, did it well. I was a heavy machine gunner. I was a operator of a 50 cal machine gun doing convoy security all up and down some of the worst roads on the planet. Was there for about 9 months. In those 9 months, we did about 30,000 miles over the road. Ended up injuring my back and came home after 9 months, got out of the Army, then watched my life go into a pretty tight downward spiral, now suffering from PTSD, really a bit unaware of what was going on with me, but I knew something was very different when I returned home. I was very angry. I was drinking a lot. I started abusing prescription drugs when I could get my hands on them. Fast forward 3 years and one child later. So now my first wife and I, we had 3 kids. And after 3 years of being home and just really being a mess, her and I split. In my limited wisdom at the time, I said I needed some kind of stabilizing factor in my life. So I went back into the Army. Went back in 2007, continued to serve. I really loved it, really enjoyed the opportunity to serve my country and to lead soldiers and to do my part, and enjoyed the community that it offered to me and just the chance to do my part, serve my country. And from 2007 till 2014, 2009, remarried second time. By 2010, started dealing with the VA, had started, finally accepted the responsibility for the back injury that I suffered in Iraq, and started treating that back problem with a very large bottle of pain meds that they would send me on a monthly basis to address my problem. And as fate would have it, that led pretty quickly to a pretty bad pain med addiction. So basically the entire rest of my second tour of service to my country, I was suffering from a pretty bad pain med addiction. So fast forward a little bit, 2012, was sent overseas on my second deployment to Africa, Northeast Africa. And on that second deployment, with only 8 years in service, I'd been selected for promotion to E7, which is a pretty dramatic rise up the ranks. And I was getting ready to put in my paperwork for an indefinite reenlistment. I was getting ready to go full bore, do a full 20 or 30-year career, and I was getting ready for promotion. On that second deployment, I was under a pretty heavy level of stress in running the logistics for the battalion that I worked for, and my body started falling apart. The injury that I had from Iraq was a compressed disc in my back, my lower back. That disc fully herniated on my second deployment. As a result of some stress-related conditions, I ended up losing the vision of my right eye permanently. I was diagnosed with stage 2 hypertension. I was about 9 years into my career. The Army said that they were going to process me for medical retirement, which really broke my heart. I did not want to leave the Army, did not want to get out, but I didn't have a choice. So I spent the last year in basically, building my case to make sure that, all my medical conditions were going to be covered by the Army and the VA. October 6th of 2014 was my last day in uniform. Was in the process of filling out my paperwork and processing out, and one of the steps in that process was I had to sit with the VA rep. So sat down with the VA rep. He asked me what I like to do recreationally. I don't know if he was just, trying to have a pleasant conversation with me, or if he was, looking for something. But I told him, I grew up in Western Massachusetts, but I'm an outdoor guy. I love the outdoors, love hiking and camping and hunting and fishing. And, I was really enjoyed those things growing up, and would love to, continue to do those things now that I was going to be getting out of the service. And he told me, when you go home, Todd, do some research online. He said there's a lot of programs out there that, raise money to send vets on hunting programs and fishing programs. And I said, hey, man, that sounds great. So as soon as I got home that day, I started doing some research online, and I found that there are hundreds of those kinds of programs all over the country. But the problem was they were all either down south or out west. There was nothing in the Northeast. The closest program to me was in Ohio. And that was a little discouraging. And so I started doing some research on how many vets live in New England, according to the VA. So I started doing some research on their website, and according to the VA, there's about 1 million veterans that live in the 6 proper New England states. Those states are, for listeners' reference, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. And so I started looking at that information and found out that there's 1 million vets that live in New England. And, even more active duty folks and reserve and National Guard folks that live in the area. And, from my experience in the service, I knew that there's a pretty strong percentage of us that like the outdoors. I mean, part of the reason that a lot of people go into the service is, they grow up going to Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or FFA or 4-H, and there's this love for the outdoors. There's this love for adventure. There's this love of shooting guns. There's a love of, being out in the woods and camping and doing some of those things that you get to do in the military. And that line runs pretty strong in the veteran world and in the active duty world. And so realizing that, A, that there's probably a lot of people that enjoy those things, and B, there's a lot of people in New England that have served their country and could probably benefit from a program like this, the wheels kind of started turning on, what would eventually become New England Adventures. But at that point, it was just me thinking about things and thinking about how it would come to be. And it didn't go much beyond thinking and, jotting down some preliminary ideas about it. But pretty shortly after my separation from the service, was in the process of watching my second marriage fall apart. It was going pretty badly. Again, PTSD issues, alcohol issues, still deeply in the throes of my pain med addiction. It was bad. It was worse than the first one and falling apart pretty rapidly. And on top of that, now I was suffering from the loss of community. When you're in the service, one of the things that men and women love about being in the service, and one of the benefits you get from being in the service, is the community. You never see single guys going out to do a mission. There's always a team, even down to your smallest group of guys. Even in a sniper team, there's always a sniper and a spotter. It's never one guy out doing a mission on his own. And the idea behind that is there's strength in those numbers. And when men and women are in the service, you get to depend on that community. That community becomes, in a lot of ways, lifeblood to you. You know that the guy on your left and the guy on your right is going to do their job, pull the trigger when they need to make sure that you get home to your family. And so that community is a huge part of the lifestyle in the military community. And what a lot of men and women suffer from when they separate from the military is that loss of community. They go home and they go back to their jobs. They go back to changing oil at the local Jiffy Lube, or working at Walmart, or back to the local bank, or, back to the local architect shop, and they just go back to normal life. And they try to find meaningful relationships with the civilians that they work with and they interact with. But it's challenging. It's challenging to find people that understand your language and understand the struggles you've seen and understand the places that you've been and understand the sacrifices that you've made for your country. And so a lot of men and women really struggle in that adjustment phase of just trying to find something meaningful in the civilian world. I found that to be very true for myself. I was really struggling. It got pretty bad.
So yeah, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I used to carry cans of food into the backcountry, and I know there's a lot lighter things to do, but there's just a lot of options that aren't good for you or are either too heavy, and that's why I really do use Peak Refuel now. They're a new backpacking food company, and I say backpacking food, really it's just freeze-dried food that you can use for anything. I've actually eaten it for dinner before with my family because it's real food. It does not taste like backpacking food or hunting food or something that you're only going to eat in the backcountry. It's delicious, high in protein, nutritious. It is going to refuel you. It is filling, huge portions, and I really encourage you all to give it a shot. At least try it out. And that is peakrefuel.com. And if you want to get 20% off an order, use the code ASP20. And that's capital ASP and then 20. Now, back to the episode.
So, here I am struggling with all these issues going on in my life. And, fast forward a little bit, July of 2015, now I've been dealing with this drug addiction for about 5 years, seeing the effects of it on my kids, on my marriage, on my life in general. Just the reality of the fact that I never went anywhere without my grocery bag full of meds, and I couldn't do anything without being on meds. And, I was constantly looking to get high, and, my kids watching their father be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where, when I'm high, I'm great and I'm easy to get along with. And as soon as that high starts to wear off and I start to come off of it, become mean and angry, and just watching my family go through this constant turmoil with me got to the point where I started to look at the idea that I was either going to be a drug addict for the rest of my life, or I was going to have to quit and walk away from all of it. And so in July of 2015, I made a decision to quit. So I grabbed that grocery bag full of meds and I went in to see my doctor at the VA. And at the height of it, I was on about 15 or 16 different medications. I was on, high blood pressure meds. I was on anti-anxiety meds. I was on antidepressants. I was on benzos. I was on 3 or 4 different pain meds. I was on sleep meds. I was on wake up meds. I mean, a huge cocktail of different kind of medications. And I went in and saw her and I put the grocery bag down in front of her and I slid it across to her and I said, "Hey doc, I'm all done." And she said, "What do you mean you're done?" I said, "I'm all done. I can't do the meds anymore." And she said, "Well, it doesn't work like that." And I said, "Well, doc, this is my body and I'm not putting this stuff in my body anymore." She said, you don't understand. She said, "Some of those meds you're on take 2 or 3 years to wean off of." And I told her, I said, "Listen, I don't have 2 or 3 years. I can't be an addict. I can't live this life anymore. And I either have to quit it all at once, or it's going to kill me." And so I got up and I walked out, and the next 2 weeks of my life were beyond miserable. At a couple points, I felt like I was going to die. I went through very, very, very bad withdrawals. Didn't sleep at one point for about 3 days. It got pretty dark, but I knew I had to go through it to get clean and get off of it. After about 2 weeks of detox, I put my family in the car and we took a cross-country trip out to Yellowstone National Park. And I'd never been that far west before. And the opportunity to go out there and go through the Rockies, and we stopped at Mount Rushmore and we went through a lot of the plain states, and we went through Wisconsin and Minnesota, and just had a chance to see some beautiful parts of the country that I'd never seen. And we get to Yellowstone. I had at Yellowstone what I would consider now sort of a quasi-spiritual experience. There's a reason that the native people venerated that area of our country, and it's just a very special place. It's hard to describe it until you go and see it and you're there. At several points on that vacation while we were in Yellowstone, just the being there, the beauty of what I'm seeing around me literally brought me to tears. And I had this experience with the wilderness that I had never had before. It was powerful and very moving. When I got home from that vacation, I knew that the idea that I had about starting a program for veterans and trying to connect them to the wilderness had to stop being an idea, and I had to step forward and I had to make it happen. I drew a line in the sand for myself, and I knew that if I stepped across that line, I'd have to go all in and I would have to create this thing. That was really the day that New England Adventures was born. And so the idea was to create this program where we would offer opportunities for veterans, current service members, and their families from New England to get connected to the outdoors, get connected to the wilderness, have these experiences where they could step out of their world and step into these special places and have these kinds of experiences. And beyond that, and what's grown out of that and what we've seen happen with our program is the fact that it's not just a program about, taking veterans and their families and current service members out into the woods to hunt and to fish and to hike in a backpack, but it's really about creating a community. It's really about giving the gift of community back to these veterans. Because as I said earlier, one of the things that veterans will tell you that they miss the most about being in the service, it's not the crappy food, it's not the crappy uniforms, it's not the long deployments, it's not the time away from family, it's not having someone tell you where to go, when to be there, how long to be there, when you can go home. It's the community. It's the brothers and sisters that they stood side by side with to defend their country and to do their job and to do their missions. And so what we've seen develop out of this program is that we've created this community that is an opportunity for people to get connected. to something special that they care about and a community that cares about them. There's a lot of programs out there that do these types of programs for veterans. Not to be critical of them, they're doing good work, a lot of them. But some of them are these kind of like they're these one and done kind of things where they're going to do a big elk hunt out in Colorado for 10 vets, and that's great. And don't get me wrong, I'd go do that in a heartbeat if I could. But if you're flying guys in from all over the country and they spend a week in elk camp out in Colorado and they have a great time and they harvest some elk and they do these great hunts and they build this small community of 10 of them for a week and they get to know each other and they're exchanging cell phone numbers and they become friends on Facebook and they become friends and enjoy that time in that community together. But when that event's over, everyone gets back on an airplane and flies back home. That community will struggle to exist beyond that event. And so what we're trying to do with our program is, as we've created it locally and regionally, is we're trying to build a community. Literally, there's no part of New England that you can't get to within an 8-hour drive. Whether you're talking upstate Maine, you can drive from the farthest part in Connecticut to Maine inside of an 8-hour drive. And there's really nowhere inside of the 6 states of New England that you can't get to within that 8-hour drive. And so the idea is that we're trying to create this program where guys are close enough and men and women are close enough to each other so that when an event is over, that community doesn't break, that they can go home and say, hey man, had a great time up here at deer camp. You only live an hour away from me. And we're talking at deer camp how you love bass fishing. There's this pond that's about halfway between where we live. Let's meet there next week and let's go do some bass fishing together. Or, hey man, let's get together and have dinner sometime. Our wives can meet and we can have this community that can be thriving and strong, and those relationships can continue to exist, and it can be beyond just the veteran connection and then the love of the outdoor connection, but then it can grow into something deeper. For anybody that pays attention to the veteran world and the veteran community, there's a number out there that's talked about pretty often amongst our ranks, and it's the number 22. And what that number 22 represents is, on average, there's 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide. Veterans often bear quite heavy burdens that their country asks them to bear. In some cases, at least 22 cases a day, that burden becomes too much to bear. We have a responsibility as the veteran community to police our own and to make sure that the men and women who've been asked to carry these burdens don't carry them alone. And I believe that the more opportunities these veterans have to be connected to a community that they care about and that cares about them, and that when that community can be ongoing and consistent and present in their life, that it's going to be much harder for them to walk out the door and go sit in the truck and put the gun to their head and pull the trigger. That when they're connected to a community that they care about and that cares about them, that they will be a better husband or wife. They'll be a better father or mother. They'll be a better employee. They'll be a better person. They'll be a better civic partner in their community. They will be more engaged, and they will live longer and happier lives when they're connected to something that matters. So that's the work we're doing. That's pretty much, the story up till now. And, we can talk more about what different kind of events we do. And I guess I can kind of kick it back to you and you can ask me kind of some follow-on questions and, see where the conversation goes.
So all of you know that I deal with some chronic pain, some chronic inflammation in my knees. And it's been an issue with my adventure sports career. But we just had Caleb Simpson on the show to talk about his company, Hemp Daddies, and I'm actually going to give their products a shot and see how they do. I'm going to be using their CBD oil and transdermal cream. I've been trying it out about a week now, and I've actually noticed I sleep better. My stress and anxiety have even lowered a little bit, as well as my knees do feel a lot better. Their products are third-party lab tested. They're made from USDA organic hemp, and they're grown on a family farm right here in Colorado. If you'd like to give it a shot yourself, go to their website, hempdaddies.com, and use the code ADVENTURE to get 10% off your first order and free shipping. And I will keep you in the loop about how it does for me. man. Well, that was a good background. It seems like the biggest theme that you're sharing with me is the importance of camaraderie. I've never been in the Army or the military, but I have been parts of teams and experiences with a group where you go through something difficult together, and it builds a connection like nothing else. And even if that experience was short term, it's a highlight of your life.
Absolutely.
And for something as prolonged as your service in the Army, I can't imagine the void that is left back in normal life, and just to be able to connect. And that's another thing I really appreciate you brought up. It's great coming out to these exotic places. Not exotic, but these places that are far from home to have an experience. But those might like be the thing that sets off the passion for, like, especially what you're doing. You said it was that trip to Yellowstone, but you can't do that every weekend. You can't even do that every year. So you need something that's close to home that you can be a part of on a very consistent basis. And that's what I love about what you're doing. So, go ahead and tell us what y'all do, and how many people get involved, and kind of some of your hopes for the future, and also how difficult it is for you, or how much you enjoy it. Do you find it comes natural to you, stuff like that?
Yeah. So for 2018, we ran 17 events this year. They cross the spectrum of anywhere from, we've done ice fishing events. We have run a trout flotilla where we get a bunch of boats together and put vets on boats and take them out trout fishing for the day. We've done a largemouth bass flotilla as well. We've done a couple striped bass fishing events. We have run 3 white-tailed deer camps, one to upstate New York, one to New Hampshire, and one here in Western Mass. We have done a pheasant hunt. We have done a black bear hunt up in Maine. We have done a sea duck hunt out in Cape Cod. We have done a family day event, which is basically an event that we run at a local YMCA camp and invite vets, current service members, and their families to come out for a fun day at camp, where we do everything from rock climbing to archery to BB gun shoots to arts and crafts, and the pool's open, and it's just a fun day at camp for everyone. This year was our first year that we ran a family retreat. So we took 80 people out to a beautiful YMCA camp on a private lake out in Northeast Connecticut, and lodged them, fed them, and then had a whole full weekend of activities: boating, canoeing, sailboating, kayaking, BB gun range, archery range, and then just a whole host of, bonfires at night, s'mores, movies. We did a whole bunch of events. That's kind of a look at what we do. We're in the process of trying to expand our offerings. I love it. It's a lot of work. So a little bit more on my story. I'm 100% disabled and unemployable according to the VA. So both my work and all of my board, we're all volunteers. None of us get paid a dime to do this. I work on this program probably between 60 and 80 hours a week of work goes into this. So it's a beyond a full-time job, but it is a labor of love. I really enjoy what we do. I can tell you it gets pretty tiring. From September to February is our busiest time of the year, just with all of our hunting activities, and then every February we do a big wild game dinner and charity auction fundraiser as our main fundraiser for the year. That's how we raise the bulk of our funds to fund us for our year. So it's a lot of work. In 2019, we're going to be looking to develop our programming so that we can add some more adventure style programming. We'd love to do things like whitewater rafting and like a canoeing weekend, and we'd love to add some more programming that's not so focused on just the hunting and fishing. Those things are great. But we want to do some more programming so that we can get a little bit more cross spectrum of people who have interest in the outdoors that don't necessarily lie in, the hunting and fishing aspects. But it's been a challenge to build this. I tell you, one of the things that has been tough is, if you remember back when I told you, when I looked up these programs initially, most of them were down south or out west. There's sort of a political reason around that. If you think about it, down south, out west tend to be the more conservative parts of the country, tend to be the more Republican parts of the country, tend to be the parts of the country that tend to be more pro Second Amendment, very strong veteran supporters. Not that the Democratic parts of the country don't support veterans, but they support them in a different way. But the programs that are down south and out west, I mean, they can go to every business in every county and, 5 counties wide and knock on a door and say, hey, listen, we're trying to start a program where we're going to take veterans hunting and fishing. Would you help support us? And most business owners down south and out west grew up hunting and fishing, and they're patriots, and they support veterans causes, and, they'll line up to write checks to these organizations. It's not so easy here in the Northeast. The challenge has been the fact that we do hunting and fishing programs, and we're here in, one of the most, left-leaning parts of the country. And so getting the support from businesses and local communities and from the state and the regional, programs that are here has been very challenging. Challenging, and when I say challenging, I mean no support at all. And so one of the approaches that we've taken is, I knew kind of from the beginning that if we were going to be able to do this long term and get financially independent to where we could do what we want to do and run the programs the way we want to run them, that we would have to find a way to make a splash in the outdoor sporting industry world. Because, let's face it, it's the Cabela's of the world, it's the Remingtons, it's the Winchesters, it's the Kelties, it's the Patagonias, it's those companies, it's the GoPros, the Garmins, it's those companies in the outdoor sporting world that have the deep pockets. And they're always looking to sponsor people. They're always looking to support, a cause that they want to get behind, and it's a tax write-off for them. But they tend to focus on where their big sales are, and their big sales are not in the Northeast. Their big sales tend to come from the other parts of the country, and so we've made efforts to, and part of the reason I reached out to you is to try to get our message out there and try and find people that will hear our story and listen to what we're doing and help spread the word about what our program is and what we're doing. One thing that we're hoping is going to come out soon and go well for us is last November, a year ago, we had a writer and 2 photographers from Outdoor Life come to our Western Mass deer camp that we ran last November, and they wrote a story, and they're supposed to be running an article in Outdoor Life either December or in the spring issue of Outdoor Life, which will hopefully be huge for us. Hopefully, get some people on a more national scale hearing about what we're doing and hopefully paying attention to it, because we think if we can get to the owners and the decision makers at some of these big companies and let them know what we're doing, we think we can find some more substantial support for our program, to the point that we can really do this on a much larger scale. And we would love to. I believe that our program is scalable. I believe that we can do this. Ideally, we think the next steps from here would be to have like a chapter in each one of the 6 New England states, that would have some oversight from our main office and our main board, and to be able to develop more of these programs, but do them on a more local level to Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont, Rhode Island and Connecticut, Mass, and be able to do that well on a regional level. But then, there's no reason why our program, and really the heart and the emphasis of our program, not only being connecting veterans with the wilderness, but really building that community, can't be done in Wyoming or in California or in Texas or in Illinois or in Oregon, or Idaho or wherever. I believe, and I've seen it time and time again, and I can tell you stories that would break your heart about people that have come to our events, and it's literally saved their lives. I've had at least 2 veterans tell me that they were in pretty dark places and they were actually getting ready to commit suicide, but because they heard about our program, they applied for an event and got selected to go on an event, and they came on an event, and then they met a bunch of veterans who loved the same outdoor activities as them, and they became friends with them. They have now abandoned that idea of killing themselves, and they're now a part of our community. So when you look at what we're doing, on the face of things, it may just look like, oh, here's a bunch of guys that just want to go into the woods and kill deer and catch trout, and that's all that they're doing. It's so much deeper than that, and it's really important work that we're doing, and we really want to try and get our message out on a more national level, so people can hear about what we're doing and understand that these programs are important. But beyond the program itself, what we need to be doing is building and developing and offering this community and doing it on purpose.
So buying ski gear can be a pretty daunting process, especially when it's online, but Powder 7 made that process incredibly easy. They live by their mantra, which is skiing for all for skiing, by being completely dedicated just to skiing and encouraging anyone and everyone to participate all year long. It really doesn't matter if you're looking for your first pair of skis or looking to round out your quiver. They have literally thousands of skis in stock, new and used, so you can get a really good deal, a team of ski experts to help you find the perfect ski for you, and they stock every brand you can imagine. And not only skis, but they have everything else you need, whether it's a helmet or goggles, apparel, boots, bindings, poles, literally everything. The only thing they really don't get you is a lift ticket. It's crazy. So you can visit them online at powder7.com or stop by their store there in Golden, Colorado. But make sure you give them a shot before trying anywhere else for your ski equipment. I think that's pretty incredible that it has changed people's lives so drastically that they have shared that with you. I mean, that's got to be rewarding. And you mentioned some of the things that you want to look for, that you guys are moving towards, which is just growing, having more events, having more people involved. Have you found that this pursuit of New England adventures has filled that void for you?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we've got a blog on our website. So if anybody's interested who's listening to this wants to check out our website, it's www.newenglandadventures.org. We've got a blog on there, and my most recent blog post was it's titled "I Needed the Community and the Community Needed Me," and it's just a blog post about how in developing this program, I realized personally how life-giving and how important this community is to myself personally, and how much I realize now that this thing is life-giving to me too. And as I've seen people start to rally around what we're doing, it's really opened my eyes to the fact that there's something special that we're doing here, that it's not just because, listen, right? I mean, you know this, Mason, you've seen it. I'm sure you come across all kinds of nonprofits and you deal with all kinds of people, and you know when people are in something for themselves and they've got an agenda that's not necessarily about advancing a cause, but it's often about self-aggrandizement. It's often about self-promotion. When you do something for the right reasons and you consistently stay after that cause, good things happen and it will start to grow. My board is fully consisted of veterans that have been on our program, that have been impacted by it, and that have come back to say, how do I help you and get involved and serve? With one exception. Our vice president is not a veteran, but he is a Gold Star family member. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with what that terminology means, but a Gold Star family member is someone who has lost a family member to combat overseas. His name is Pete Sadowski. He lost his nephew in Iraq in 2004. And so when you see people of the quality and character that I see coming back and getting involved in this thing and wanting to attach themselves to it, it's pretty profound. And you get the sense that this isn't that we're kind of on to something here. At the end of the day, it's not about us making a name for ourselves. It's about building this community, and to the point where one of the things that we do, and we do pretty well, is we network with other veterans organizations, because I'm wise enough to know that we don't have all the answers, right? We aren't where things start and stop, because I'm going to come across vets that aren't into the outdoors. I might come across somebody that's really into art. Well, guess what? We're networked with another nonprofit organization that does art therapy for veterans. And if I come across a guy that couldn't care less about hunting deer, but really wants to paint or draw, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, hey, man, I know this guy, Steve Jones. He runs a program called the Warriors Art Room. Go look him up, get connected to his organization. Or if I come across somebody like, couldn't care less about catching bass, but he wants to fly airplanes, I'm connected with this other guy. His name's Jesus Pereira. He runs an organization called Vet Air, where they fly veterans to their VA appointments if it's too long of a drive. And I'm going to give him Jesus's phone number, and I'm going to say, hey, man, go check out Jesus and his program that he's running. Because at the end of the day, it's not about someone standing under the New England Adventures flag. At the end of the day, it's about me as a veteran taking responsibility of helping other veterans getting connected to a community that they care about. Because if that can happen, then the chances of them living a better life, the chances of them not killing themselves, the chances of them contributing and giving back and being involved in helping solve some of the problems that are facing the veteran community are much greater. And so when you're doing something that matters and you're doing it for the right reasons, I think that's a special thing. And I think you can really see things go in the right direction. So, in spite of the fact that we don't really have any significant sponsorships from any national outdoor sporting companies, and this article still hasn't come out yet, and we still haven't made too big of a splash. I mean, we've got a couple, we got 2,200 followers on Facebook, and some other connections on some other social media platforms and stuff like that. We're not super well connected, but we're doing pretty well with what we have and what we've been given. And we're continuing to grow the program and continuing to develop it, and I believe a healthy and purposeful way. And I think if you're doing something for the right reasons and you're trying to build something that matters and not just to build a name for yourself, then the chances of success are much higher than the people that are just looking to do something because they want to shake the mayor's hand, or they want to, an invite to the senator's office and get an attaboy from the senator. Because at the end of the day, I couldn't care less about any of that stuff, as I want this community to grow and I want to see veterans connected to something that matters.
Wonderful. That's awesome. And so if veterans do want to connect after hearing this show, how can they get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with the program? Yeah,
so a couple different ways. As I mentioned earlier, our web address is www.newenglandadventures.org. You can go on there, and there's all kinds of information about our programs. There's an event tab. So if you live local to New England and you want to go on an event, you can click on the event tab. So if you see something coming up in September, like our black bear hunt, and you're interested in attending that, you can click on the event. It'll bring up the event, all the information on it. There'll be a hyperlink on the event for the adventure application. You click on the adventure application, it'll download right to your computer screen. You can fill it out right there, and then you can email it back to us at info@newenglandadventures.org. There's also a bunch of information on there about, people that have sponsored our program. There's galleries on there from a bunch of different events that we've run. There's information about our leadership team. There's more information about New England Adventures. You can follow us on Facebook. Just go on to Facebook and search for New England Adventures. Instagram, you can follow us on Instagram at @new_England_adventures01. You can find me on LinkedIn, Todd Crevier on LinkedIn. Yeah, so we're out there just trying to connect with as many people as we can and do a good job at this. We got a big fundraiser coming up in February. It's going to be our 4th annual wild game dinner and charity auction fundraiser. We'll be running that in mid-February, and we're going to have probably about 400 guests out to that dinner. We're going to raise probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 at that one event. We're going to have all kinds of hunting trips up for auction. We're going to have firearms, archery equipment, hunting gear, fishing gear. We're going to have Chinese raffles. We're going to have silent auctions, live auctions. It's going to be quite an event, and that's going to be our big event for the year. And we're going to hopefully raise a lot of money so we can fund all of our programming for the year. And but we're always looking for new sponsors. We're always looking for people that are interested, that are in the industry, that would like to come alongside of us and help us with donations, help us with sponsorships, gear donations, anything along those lines. We're always looking for whatever help we can get. So those are the spots that they can go to follow us and see what we're doing and stay posted on all the goings on here at New England Adventures.
Awesome, dude. Well, Todd, thanks so much for joining us, man. I appreciate you getting into the background of what you guys do and being open and sharing, and we really wish you the best. We love what you're doing, and it's incredibly important work. So we're looking forward to sharing it and see if we can get some people rounded up for you.
Absolutely. That'd be awesome, Mason. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right, man. We'll have a good one, okay?
All right, you too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, talk to you.
All right, man. Have a good day, okay?
You too.
All right, see you, Todd.
Yep.
Bye. Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you know somebody that would make a good guest on the show, or if you have a pretty cool story about the outdoors or adventure sports that you want to tell us, please call us and leave a voicemail at 812-MAIL-POD. That is 812-624-5763. You can also send us an email at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. Again, it is always helpful to leave us a review on iTunes. And if you'd like to be a supporter of the show, you can give $5 a month at patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. And links for all that stuff is also in the show notes. So thanks again for listening. And y'all get out there and do something so you can be on the show one day. All right, later. Also, don't forget, if you want to save 20% off the best backpacking food on planet Earth, go to peakrefuel.com and at checkout, use the code ASP20. So now in their 12th season, Powder 7 is setting the bar for ski retailers everywhere with their personalized service, wide selection of skis and gear. Visit them online at powder7.com or stop by their store in Golden, Colorado. Also, don't forget, if you're dealing with inflammation, pain, stress, anxiety, lack of sleep, do some research and check out hempdaddies.com for CBD oil and transdermal cream. And use the code ADVENTURE at checkout to save 10%.